Jamaica's sand crisis, exploring catastrophic impacts of unchecked illegal extraction.
Let me just take a quick.
You want to start it? You want to start it today?
Yeah, we call it shifting shoreline. The pirates of Black River and the sand mafia. And remember when we started out, I said there are some things going on with the illegal mining of sand that most of you either don't know about, or if you knew about it, you didn't give it much attention. But it is a significant issue that has to be dealt with on a number of levels: environmental, corrupt, you name it, all over the place. So, all right, let me start with this. We might not finish this, and we haven't gotten to. Somebody write to me from Jamaica concerning UWI thing, but we won't get to it. Here we go.
The modern world is made of it. Sand is in concrete, asphalt, glass, and silicon. It even turns up in places you wouldn't expect.
We use sand in cosmetics, in certain kinds of wine. We use sand in paint. We use sand to make elastics.
Around 50 billion tons of sand and gravel are used every year. That's enough to cover the whole of Argentina in a layer 1 centimetre thick. 90% of all the sand mined goes into the construction industry. China and India are the biggest consumers.
All over the developing world, hundreds of millions of people are moving from the countryside into cities every year. So worldwide, we are building the equivalent of 9 New York cities every single year.
And not all of the world's sand can be used for construction. Desert sands, eroded by wind, are round. The best sand for concrete has jagged edges and comes from rivers. This shape helps it bind together, making it strong and durable. Sand is taken from riverbeds by hand or by dredgers, and more is being extracted than can naturally be replenished.
Sand, which is the second most extracted material in the world after water, is in short supply.
Globally, the sand market is worth around $165 billion, but it's nearly impossible to know how much of that has been sourced illegally.
The estimates range anywhere, up into the tens of billions of dollars. We know for sure that there's illegal sand mining in dozens and dozens of countries. It happens in Western Europe and North America on a relatively small scale. And it happens in the developing world on like a millions of ton scale.
Researchers estimate that in these countries, more than 50% of sand mining is illegal. But no organisation tracks sand, so there isn't international data. In the Gambia, a one-off Interpol operation targeting illegal activity found unprecedented levels of illicit sand mining.
This is all dredged sand from the seaside, huge mountains of sand.
Illegal mining means sand is removed without proper authorization or from prohibited areas. And once it's mixed with legal sand, it's almost impossible to tell the difference.
It can be transported to a construction site and no one knows where it came from and nobody asks questions. It can be moved on a container ship and nobody knows where the source of it is.
Ease of extraction, high demand for concrete, and the fact that sand is legal to buy and sell mean that illegal mining continues with little opposition.
Sand is a free commodity. Anybody who is strong enough, powerful enough can go and collect sand.
And it's often at the local level where exploitation starts and where so-called sand mafias operate.
It can be either a small villager who's taking sand from the beach to build his own house, right up to the point where people who have taken sand and realized how lucrative it is have risen and formed networks and gangs.
This is usually possible through bribery or intimidation.
There's just major corruption of local and regional governments in sand mining because there's very little capacity to enforce prohibitions.
If your houses are washed away, it impacts you immediately. Even without a catastrophe like a flood, you can see the effects because you can see the erosion on a daily basis.
Overmining of rivers and beaches means there's a greater risk of landslides and flooding, while dredging has significant consequences for fragile ecosystems.
When you do that, when you suck up the bottom of a river, obviously, whatever was living down there, whatever kind of fish and plant life were living on that riverbed, you just annihilated their habitat, wiped it out.
New technologies could help. More concrete than ever is being recycled, and sand can be created artificially by crushing rocks. But manufacturing is expensive, and both are energy intensive. And as long as extracting sand remains cheap and plentiful, Cracking down on sand smuggling won't be easy.
You need to have communities much more involved in monitoring illegal sand mining. You've got to be addressing the corruption. You need to raise awareness. And because nobody is paying adequate attention to it, it goes on and the devastation continues.
In a primetime news follow-up, a promise this evening by the National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, to visit a sand mining pit in St. Elizabeth. It's a source of worry for residents who argue that it is being overmined. We have the details in this report.
From roads to housing, the country has seen a major construction boom in recent times, and so the demand for material like sand is high, which takes us to this spot in Fort Charles, St. Elizabeth, a sand pit which has been mined for years. From our checks, it is a legal area for sand mining, but there are concerns about overuse. So deep the miners have dug that we observed uprooted trees. Lots of them. Martel Bryan is a resident of the area.
Minus 20, 60 feet below sea level, you know.
He's been tracking the depth of what he describes as the destruction of the sand bed. In addition to the use of his GPS, he's also been speaking to the persons loading the trucks. Mr. Bryan spoke of a recent conversation.
It tells me that he's giving no direction as to where to mine. He just given the green light to mine anywhere.
Mr. Bryan argues that communities close to where the mining has been taking place are at risk of being wiped out in the event of a tsunami. That's because, according to him, the natural barrier has been compromised. In fact, in the distance, you can hear very clearly the waves crashing on the seashore. The erosion there is also glaring.
Parity, Slipe, Vineyard, Arlington, surrounding areas, Hilltop, will be washed away.
We brought the issue to the attention of the mayor of Black River, Derek Sangster.
The sand is being used mainly for construction purposes island-wide because, as I understand it, trucks from all over come to purchase sand from the mine. And it's also used on road works, which, you know, from time to time, laying of pipes, sand is used and so on. But it is all taking place within legal framework.
So what of concerns about overmining?
I'm going to have a look at it, and if it needs be, calling the relevant authorities to have a look and assess the situation.
When we contacted the National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, we were also told that a site visit is being organized for the area.
The first video you saw, first one from BBC, the whole purpose of that was to show you that sand is in high demand and also point to the environmental impact of illegal sand mining. The video you just saw, the one in Jamaica, that was 5 years ago. The government was warned about the effects of illegal sand mining. 5 years ago. Let's continue.
News update now. The National Environment and Planning Agency, NEPA, has confirmed that it has begun investigations into the illegal selling and removal of sand from Parity in St. Elizabeth. The move follows a TVJ News story on Monday where concerned residents appealed for intervention on the illegal practice, which they stressed was putting them at greater risk of flooding. Huge piles of sand were dumped into homes and onto roadways in the community during the passage of Hurricane Melissa in October last year. And residents say some of their neighbors have been selling it. They say it's worsening flooding from the sea and the pond and making it hard for persons trying to rebuild following the hurricane's devastation. Speaking with TVJ News, Black River Mayor Richard Solomon said sand mining in any form is unacceptable.
Sand without the proper assessment can lead to ecological impact, which can be catastrophic down the road. So we're asking and we are encouraging persons, if this is so, they must cease and desist immediately. I've reached out to the superintendent of police and also NEPA for them to do an investigation into the matter and to provide some necessary guidance as to how we approach the whole sand erosion and sand buildup that would have taken place after the hurricane.
Black River. Yes. We're going to rebuild.
Listen to this carefully. People of Black River, Treasure Beach, listen to this carefully.
Black River. So Black River is the legacy of our colonialism. When Black River was conceived, nobody was thinking about climate.
You know what? Before we do that, Kevin, there is something I want to remind the people. Let me just stop this right there and just remind them about this incident. I don't know how many remember this. See this? See this? Kevin, you can big it up for them, please. See what this says right at the top though. This article is more than 17 years old. Right? It says Jamaican police left stranded after thieves steal a beach. This was in 2000. Look at thieves in Jamaica.
I don't even remember this story.
All right. Thieves in Jamaica have embarrassed police and triggered a political row by stealing a beach and making a clean getaway. Hundreds of tons of white sand vanished. Hundreds of tons of white sand vanished from a planned resort on the island's north coast in July. But 3 months later, there is no sign of suspects nor sign. Look at the estimated 500 truckloads of sand were removed from the Coral Spring Beach in Trelawney and were believed to have been sold to rival resorts. A heavy logistical feat which has stumped police. It's a very complex investigation because it involves so many aspects. Mark Shields, the Deputy Commissioner for Crime at the JC, told the BBC. You've got the receivers of the stolen sand, or what we believe to be the sand, the trucks themselves, the organizers, and of course there is some suspicion that some police were in collusion with the movers of the sand. A lot of sand is used in unregulated home building across the Caribbean island, but the scale and organization behind the Trelawney heist amounting 1,300 feet of why them can't spell, man? Them put strand to be raise suspicions that hotels may have been in. Jamaica's rampant crime is fueled by competition for another type of white powder, cocaine, but few are laughing at the novelty of sand theft. No, the whole purpose of it. How you steal a beach? Talk to me about.
No, Devon have to answer that. What Devon?
How you steal a beach and what are the all right? Devon, we see you laugh, can we see your teeth?
No, what is it? Yeah. What do you Devon use to answer this? What is steal a beach?
Well, I mean, they can't steal a beach without the complicity of the government, right? Because the beach is quote unquote vested in the crown. You see, this is a very, very serious topic you can't touch, right? Because in order for you to have operations with trucks and trucks.
I can't hardly hear you. Your voice no crack. Your voice cracking.
Yeah, the signal by that VT rate still. Yeah, you hear me? No, for us, for the size and the scope of those operations, it carry up without state involved.
No. Your voice is still cracking and it's low.
Where you reach it look like is a dead spot where you reach. Oh, all right, let's go back and join. Come back and join us. All right, so let me. All right, I'm gonna try wrap my.
How you steal a beach? How you steal a beach with how many truckloads? I think it's a 500. Yeah, 500 truckloads of sand. How you steal that? How you
Now, based on the article, based on the report before the Jamaican report, the international, what they have found, people don't ask questions when it comes to moving sand. Trucks come in, trucks go out. People don't really ask questions about it. Nobody knows for sure no documents really. So I think when they see trucks coming in and front end loaders and everything, dumper trucks and tractors to load, people just think about okay, them have permission. They are in the know. They have all that and it does load. That's all I can come up with. But it is based on what I heard at the beginning. Outside of that,
yeah, they know these things could not happen without law enforcement being part of it, right? To carry out such a massive operation, right? This cannot happen without law enforcement. It's a common thing that's known in the fishing community. You raise the issue around Coral Springs. There's another space down there at Charlotte's Beach in Trelawney, massive, beach that a lot of sand move off, and absolutely, it goes to other rival resorts. They used to steal sand off Winifred Beach too. To support other resorts in Portland. So it's actually known. It's a known thing within Jamaica as it relates to sand theft. And them things just don't happen, just some random guy off the streets will be able to pull in, 15 dumper truck and load them up and move them. Police must know about them too. They're very reaching.
They call impact.
I had to move a while ago because police still. Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, it's a very serious issue. And you hear NEPA now moving in and saying things like, they're investigating NEPA, I mean, should have active monitoring, right, of our whole, sentinels of the fishing community that is offered protection when they report, because most of the time people fear for their life also. So this is why SW agreement is very important that Jamaica ratify these things that would protect environmental defenders. And the government is dragging its feet on the ratification of SW agreement, which allows also for proper protection of environmental defenders. So when we see these violations happen out there, we can talk about them. But maybe the state does not want the Jamaican people to be empowered to really deal and talk about this issue, right? Because, I mean, I don't know, the level of corruption as it relates to Jamaica is massive. So...
Let me ask you a question, Devon. Talk to us about the ecological impact of illegal sand mining. And then you can even use Black River, because I've been told that that's part of the reason why Black River was as flooded as it was, simply because of, we saw one report of them says 60 feet below sea level.
Below sea level. Yeah, well, yeah, man. No, the sand is very important in maintaining the integrity of the law, right? When you remove the sand acts as a barrier, to mitigate against climate change, right? So when you have high storm surges and, rise above, above the sea level, I have to get off of this bus, so give me a minute. Go on, all the reason, give me a minute, let me get up.
All right, cool. Yeah. While we wait for him to come back on, let's continue with the
Yeah. It's when Black River was conceived, nobody was thinking that Jamaica would have so many, that we would need to have wider, that we would face these kinds of issues with hurricane and so forth. So if we were to build Black River today, we wouldn't build it where it is currently, because we have the knowledge and the experience of what has happened. So many years ago, 2016, 17, I've given a directive to the UBC to identify where the third could be built. Because we do have a kind of spatial development plan for Jamaica and urbanizing. And we recognize that all our towns, many of them are simple and weren't built for purpose, where they can't supply, they can't sufficiently carry the purpose today. And the last time we built a town was Louisville in St. Elizabeth. In response to the market flooding. So we asked the UBC to do this work, and they came up with an area in St. Elizabeth, which is very close to Black River. I don't want to give too much detail. I'm very reluctant, because anything I say can change how markets work. So I have to also land the bread. So I think which defeats the purpose of having a bill. Yes, we can say that.
Let me just run through a couple. And the video before this, the one about illegal sand mining on it, the sand that's being sold is the sand that protects Black River and other coastal towns from storm surge, and Dr. Taylor that. And removing it increases the risk of worse. It's obvious. The designated authorities, NEPA, should have returned the sand, for example, should have returned the sand or ensure that the sand was returned to the coastline after Hurricane Melissa, rather than letting it sit or being taken to. And now by it, the coastline has become weaker and more vulnerable to storms. And as sure as the sun, if you believe the sun is going to rise, then you better believe that there's going to be a hurricane season. And we're not. So the question is, whose profit and washed up by Hurricane Melissa? Sand mining has been. And here are some dates I want. On February 18, 2022, NEPA issued a stop order on sand dune mining at day in Treasure Beach. The community was concerned that dune removal of the sand, could increase flood risk. And we see what happened over that was 2022. February 16, 2023, NEPA ordered a suspension of sand mining in the Rio Grande River. Enforcement action was taken to how sand extraction was being cut, but we haven't heard much. Then March of last year, the Trelawney police warned against illegal sand mining along the Knock River in Stoke, where no mining. A stop order was issued as police and NEPA investigated. We don't hear from anybody going. On December 12, they were removing and selling storm from Hurricane Melissa along St. coastline. Who's profiting from who? I know we hear the Prime Minister saying that he's planning Black River. People, do not sell your property. This is what's going on. The long range, because the North Coast is basically inundated. And even if you find places along the North Coast, it's going to be expensive. So they've gone to the South. Right? And you see what's going on. So it's ironic that there's a push to displace residents and redevelop Black River. But that comes at the expense of those who have endured its environmental challenges that are worsened by either deliberate or the Prime Minister's point. If flooding is an island-wide concern due to span and slower storm, then moving one coastal town, Black River, does not solve the underlying problem, which makes Black River a symbolic, not a systemic one.
Yeah.
And this signals a politically easy. Do you hear me? This signals a politically easier target to unlock high-value land under a climate. So the basic question is simple.
Disaster.
Go ahead, my brother. Go ahead.
That is what it's called. It's called disaster capitalism. It's what happened in, I think, 2017 with Hurricane Irma in Barbuda. Quote unquote said that all Barbuda is uninhabitable, and then move off every resident off it, only for it now to be turning into a massive tourism resort, right? And we don't even need to go there. It happened in Jamaica, not in the form of the hurricane, but in the form of when they build the new North Coast. So do you know that the old road now runs through Ardra Cafe property and through Iberia Star a swimming pool, right? So they moved, towns further inland to create more real estate on the coastline for tourism development. So I suspect that's what Black River. Now, if Black River was going to be reclaimed as an ecological wild, life sanctuary, right? For, just to mitigate the impact of climate change, to create back coastal forests, then, we can understand. But it will be used for real estate development, right? There's a lot to be talked about here because, sorry for, to jump off, but, the sand is the foundation of the sea and the coastline, right? It sustains your mangroves, it sustains grass beds, it protects against erosion. It is what's saving, most coastal communities. And when you remove these things, you put lives in jeopardy, put ecology in jeopardy, right? And so it should be a highly enforced area, these kinds of activity country. And we're not seeing that happening. Why, an agency such as NEPA, which is not actually an environmental agency, it's a agency where all of its function is in the office of the Prime Minister, right? So it is not, we do see they set up this new agency around environmentalism. NEPA, as I understand it, is not even within the new environmental ministry. And I would stand corrected if, the government comes out and state clearly where is NEPA and what NEPA's meant to be. Because the issues that are arising in Jamaica now around, creation, environmental protection, restoration of coastal forests, these should fall under the environmental ministry's, portfolio. And they are not, because the practices in Jamaica is to deforest the entire coastline for the development of hotel industry. That is very clear. Every hotel that is built in Jamaica involves the removal of forests. Okay. Melissa comes now, does devastation in Black River because I've been there. Damage. If we are going to build, restore the coastal forest there, right? I can understand that. That's a good thing for the environment. But if we reclaim Black River for other kind of tourist development, tourist hotels and, that kind of infrastructure, that would have been an injustice on the Jamaican people and consistent with the practice of disaster capitalism, where you use these kind of disasters to move population centers in order to repurpose them for these kind of, coastal project,
that are capital intense, right? And to support, the transfer of wealth to the rich. So, I mean, we have to stay on top of this to make sure whatever is happening in this Black River is for protection of the environment, to protect the lives of. So these plans needs to be laid out, put to the people, and we need to see what's going on there. And, environmental agencies such as Jamaica Environmental Trust, such as JABEM needs to be part of the conversation. We need to see what plans they're coming up with, how consistent that is with best practice to restore coastal forests happening. We have seen them talking about the impact what, Melissa have done in it, right? And they're replanting many trees across the country. They need to replant the coastal forests of Jamaica. And that's not what we're seeing. Instead, they're building hotels in the sea. I mean, in Flanker Providence, right, that beach, it's 9.8 acres past bed that is going to be removed to support an overwater bungalow. That is not consistent with the government's, conversation about, no. So, Black River, another, a part of the game of displacement, dispossession, and disempowerment, right? And we will not allow that to happen. I mean, Black River, remember, the slave ship Zong, there's a monument down in Black River around that. It was a slave port. There's a lot of atrocities that happen in Black River. It requires preservation. It requires conservation, right? And it should be returned, to the people, for the people whose lands they would have taken away, have a say into what happened in that space. And it must be one of the massive environmental restoration project if that's what we're going to do there. But we can't just allow the government to come in and determine that, they're going to put, hotel infrastructures in these places. No, that's massive disaster capitalism that we can't.
I don't think they're aware of this, that in two of an unregulated extraction around the Jamalco site, the Mud Lake in Houston. We don't have time to put that up and go till next week. What I wanna throw out some questions to the public, to the politicians, and also to Devon and Kevin responses. The question is, who moves who, right? So here are some of the questions. What specific data, such as sea level rise projections, storm surge and flood maps, land height and measurements, and studies on drain flooding, so that Black River cannot be protected for the next 30 to 50 years using adaptation measures? What specific data they're using? Here's another question. What options were looked at to protect the town, like seawalls, fixing drainage, restoring wetlands, or raising homes? And why, if they looked at them, why were those options rejected if they were? Why is full relocation being proposed rather than partial retreat from the most vulnerable zones? People, you see what's going on. Which government ministries outside experts and international groups are involved in this decision? What costs more over time? Moving Black River or where it is? Who did the cost study? And will the public to see it? Will all reports, contracts, and land plans be shared with the public before it starts? Is there a clear policy that explains when communities should be moved instead of protected? How many residents have agreed to relocation, and how was that agreement measured? Black River people, to talk to me. Will homeowners get full replacement value for hurricane damage homes or only a reduced amount? Will this move mainly affect communities? Will people get better housing or smaller homes farther away from work and family? How will fishing, farming, river work, and other local jobs survive after relocation? How will the community's history, culture, and way affected? Who will own the coastal land once river? Is there a legal rule stopping the land from being turned into hotels, ports, or lux projects? If the land is developed, who makes the money? The government, private investors, or the to move? If climate change affects everyone in Jamaica, then moving one town, moving one needs strong proof of honesty. Without clear answers, real consent, and strong protections, this looks less like climate safety and more like pushing people out. So others. That's my soapbox speech and questions. Talk to me, Kevin, and
Well, that is well said. You have hit all the points, and all of that culminates into the strong definition of what disaster capitalism is, right? It is, and there are a lot of examples of this, right? So, I mean, you have nailed it. So, there has not been this kind of consultation. And remember, a lot of this conversation about, third cities, were being talked about before, Melissa. So if anything, this is going to just accelerate the process, right? And trying to use this as evidence because the necessary consultation were not had. People, there was no town hall, there was no ground surveys that was done and consulting Black River, right? Because if we are really serious about mitigating the impact of, climate change in Jamaica, it needs to be a very comprehensive conversation, a conversation that looks at the coastline. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say you're going to move Black River, but you're allowing for hotels to build in the sea. You can't take mangrove out along the coastline. You cannot remove coastal forests. You cannot allow Chinese Urban Engineering Company to be building on the Rayabuna watershed. You cannot be entertaining a EIA for Paradise Pen in St. Elizabeth to be built on another watershed. It's not. It ain't. So this is a smoke screen for another project at displacement, right? Because if we were consulted, we would have been at the table and seen all these plans and how they fit into a great, and more methodical way of protecting the coastline of the country. And that's not what we are seeing, right? Right now, you're issuing all these beach licenses that takes away coastal forests to build more hotel, right? That is what's happening in Miami Bay right now, right? We have seen encroachment on the foreshore. It's happening in the Blue Lagoon. Beach licenses are being awarded for encroachment to build in the sea. So villas are built in the sea. This is instant. It's absolutely not all. So this is, is beyond words, right? And I tell you, the visibility and the involvement of all environmental groups are in Jamaica right now. We are demanding, right, to see what is that comprehensive plan that the government has around the restoration of coastal forests, because the sea level is going to rise, right? And if there's no buffer to help protect us, then the entire population is going to be at risk. Because I think the data is more than 80% of the Jamaican people live within the coastline. The problem is real, and it's a great danger, to the country right now. And this is why when Jabem talks about we need to declare entire 494 miles around the country with a minimum of 200 meters or feet above the high water line to be public land. It is to protect coastal forests, to protect the population. You cannot have these lands be in the hand of private individuals who degrade to build hotel. The forest around the coastline being removed. It's all gone along the north coast. All right? And that's why there's so much coastal damages to all the fishing beaches. You should go see what happened in Falmouth. Falmouth has faced the brunt of it, in the destruction of those beaches. It happened in White House, right? It happened, in all these, local towns. You should see, right? So we are exposed, and this way, if we do not restore forests. So if Black River Project is a project to restore the coastal forests, and to protect the space, right? Then we can understand that. But we have not seen.
That's a bit if when you see all the money that can be made and all the money that's made from the West Coast, and you look at the South Coast, it's pregnant, but it is the for the developer. It is not the possibility are wondering, will my grandchildren be able to enjoy? It's not for the people who live there that have stories, that have history. It is not for the people that work down there, the fishermen, and work along. It is for the capitalists. And that is where they want to go. That's how I see this. That is where they want to go. Hurricane Melissa coming was that just said everything that line. So no, look and abroad. This is really hold the government to task. This is where you ask real questions, and this is where they have to come on and not use like gobbledygook. I call it don't be the glorified talkers with elaborate words. I got that from Donnie Walker. Is time when really start not just asking the this move and else, not when else is proposed at coastline communities anywhere else in the country. Anywhere that sits on a coastline as a community to live there. The resorts would also have to move because there's a danger to land. So you want to move a residential community, a community that has been resilient, that has learned to survive disasters in the past. Mind you, one like this, move that my position is this is a capitalist venture and it ends for me. Until I can prove otherwise. Provost.
Yeah, we're almost out of time. But Devon, I want you to comment a particular we did a while back. And I think it's appropriate. It's connected to this one. And that is the government sale of the Chinese, where they rerouted rivers and a huge housing development in your neck of the woods. Can you before we go, please?
Yes. Watershed and the ecology that supports watershed is very critical, right? For protection of population, right? Protection of clean water. Most of the watersheds are degraded. One of the ones that are pretty well intact is the Raya, which is where the 731 acres of property for to take. And if we were serious about protecting our coastal forests and protecting against the impact of climate change, would have never handed over such pristine prime land that are important to the drinking water for people across St. Anne large. So the transfer of these lands, right, interests is transferring not only the wealth of the country, but is jeopardizing the ecology of the country, the safety of our water supply, right? And that is something you can't do, but they have done it, and they can do it. And when we protest against this, right, the amount of people that, of course, who should show up for this protest, did not. And I think because they do not have necessary information, right? And I'm happy that you're featuring this topic right here, because we need to pay attention to these kind of disposition that is happening, that is degrading environment, transferring to private interest that now will reroute rivers, right? Change their courses, capture their water supply, and to build houses. You can build houses on so many different pieces of land in Jamaica, and it's not even housing that the Jamaican people will benefit from, because these are ultra houses that we be able to afford. So who's benefiting from this? It's not Jamaica from this. No. And these are just wrong. How can you build a watershed? Now you want to remove folks from Black River, but you allow Chinese urban engineering company to build on a watershed, and you are entertaining, and the EIA was submitted to build a new resource spend, right? That will remove mangroves and will build overwater bungalows in the sea. How would NEPA be entity EIAs, right? They approve the EIA Foreign River St. Anne, to build all these, I think, 800 houses, watershed, right? And they entertain an EIA to build out an entire paradise pen on the coastline. They're going to say, well, I'm Black River because, not be built there. Consistent with the logic of protecting, and guarding against climate change. So we need to deep dive this, Rattigan. There's a lot of scrutiny, and we need to request, it go into the ATI now and request these things, right? We need to hold the government accountable. Remember that our environmental minister is also heads up the United Nations Environmental Department there. So, there's a lot of questions to be asked that how is it that our environmental minister who heads up the international body right, within the UN is going to oversee, right, contradictions of environmentalism in Jamaica. Requires scrutiny.
All right, Devon, we're going to leave it there. I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank all of you for being with us this afternoon. Please go and join DJ Kevin Stew right about, and then I will return at 10 p.m. 2 hours later. I will go and play 3 hours of sweet jazz, smooth, and I'm going to love it.
What Kevin I play tonight? Because I have 2 beach access songs I want him play,
Call him on away. Call him on away.
Message me. All right. Out there, do it. Arjun, Cole.
On October 28th, Melissa, a Category 5 hurricane, turned her wrath upon our homeland, Jamaica. In the aftermath, thousands of homes were destroyed, lives, pets, and livestock were lost, and dreams and hopes dashed. Resilient as we Jamaicans are known to be, our brothers and sisters on the island need our help now. To this end, the One Jamaica Legal Defense Foundation, OJLDF, has launched its official fundraiser. Please donate generously at OJLDF.net. We are depending on each and every one of you to get the most needed supplies to our people at home. Go to OJLDF.net. That's OJLDF.net and hit the donate